Mercedes had a total disaster in Melbourne. Lewis Hamilton's engine gave up early, and George Russell crashed out thanks to a sudden brake from Fernando Alonso. It's a nightmare that seems to be repeating for Mercedes. People are pointing fingers at Toto Wolff, the team boss, but is he really to blame? Lewis Hamilton says this season is one of Mercedes' worst starts ever, but at least he won't be there anyway next season. Mercedes disaster weekend. In Melbourne, Mercedes faced a weekend filled with setbacks. Lewis Hamilton's race came to an abrupt end due to a mechanical issue, forcing him to retire. Meanwhile, George Russell's unfortunate crash on the final lap added to their woes. With 0 points secured in Melbourne, the team found themselves in a precarious position, especially in comparison to McLaren, who had amassed more than double the points in the Constructors' Championship. Toto Wolff, the team principal and shareholder, openly admitted post-race that he pondered extensively about whether his continued presence within the team was beneficial given the current circumstances. Just to illustrate the magnitude of the situation, when Russell's race abruptly ended due to his collision with the wall, he was trailing the race leader by a whopping 80 seconds. It's worth noting that the leader belonged to Ferrari, not Red Bull, where the usual gap tends to be even wider. Wolff's acknowledgement that Mercedes massively lacked pace at certain points during the race only added to the frustration for the entire team back at the factory. Troubled Toto Wolff. Toto Wolff expressed a deep sense of frustration, stating that he felt like punching himself in the nose after analysing Mercedes' performance. The lap times of their cars were initially lagging behind McLaren by about a second per lap. Wolff noted a sudden improvement in lap times towards the end of the race when they pushed harder. He emphasized that Mercedes began the season with the belief that their car had improved compared to the previous year. However, the reality of McLaren's strong performance, despite their setbacks like crashes and penalties, left Wolff feeling conflicted. McLaren's drivers found themselves much farther ahead on the track, despite starting further back due to issues. Wolff recognized the situation as a testament to the potential for rapid improvement when things align correctly, but acknowledged the current period as exceptionally challenging. So obviously on one side, I wanted to punch myself on the nose, but on the other side, it is also a testimony of that when you get things right, you can turn it around pretty quickly, and you're just going to continue to believe. But at the moment, it is very, very tough time. Toto Wolff has been instrumental in the team's significant achievements, but lately they've struggled to reclaim their frontrunner status for over 2 years. This has led to doubts about whether Wolff is still the right person to lead Mercedes. Wolff acknowledges these concerns, recognizing that in his position, he must ensure his contributions are positive and constructive. He's open to new ideas and welcomes suggestions for turning the team's fortunes around swiftly. Despite the challenges, Wolff maintains that the team's issues are more about understanding the physics of the car rather than fundamental philosophical or organizational problems. Regarding doubts about his leadership, Wolff takes them seriously, constantly evaluating his actions and decisions. However, he feels confident in his current approach and doesn't believe a change in leadership is necessary at this moment. But you know, we have a physics problem, not a philosophical or organizational problem. It's just we don't understand some of the behaviors of the car from that in the past. They would have always understood. So come back to your question. I look myself in the mirror every single day about everything I do. And if I believe don't, I should ask the manager question or the trainer question. I think it's a fair question, but it's not what I feel at the moment that I should do. Toto Wolff finds himself in a unique position at Mercedes, as not only is he deeply involved with the team, but he also co-owns the company. Unlike a typical job where one could simply step down and move on, Wolff's connection to Mercedes runs much deeper. He emphasizes that he doesn't have the luxury of easily switching to another team like Chelsea, Liverpool or Ferrari. He feels somewhat trapped, unable to just walk away like a regular employee might when they've had enough. Despite the challenges, Wolff remains hopeful for better results. He appreciates the open culture within the organization where people aren't afraid to critique themselves. However, he acknowledges that finding the right solutions has been elusive so far. Reflecting on his past experiences in finance and investments, Wolff realizes that sometimes it takes time to identify the exact issues and how to address them. While he had a clearer understanding of what was lacking during his time at Williams, he finds the current situation at Mercedes more complex. Wolff points out that the team isn't necessarily missing something fundamental, rather it's like dealing with a tricky puzzle related to the car's behavior that they haven't quite cracked yet. He contrasts Mercedes' current struggles with the noticeable progress made by rivals like McLaren and Ferrari. Looking back at previous successful weekends, Wolff feels the sting of disappointment, particularly when comparing the team's current situation to where they were just a year ago. The pain of falling short despite leading early in races serves as a constant reminder of the challenges they face. It is just a complication of what's happening with the car that we can't see, and it's like an on-off switch, and then you see the progress that McLaren and Ferrari have made, and this is the difference between last year and this year. This was a pretty good weekend for us last year. I just saw the clip before, because I forgot about for a couple of past races we were leading at the beginning 1 and 2, so we gotta really dig deep because this is brutally painful. Hamilton's thoughts. Lewis Hamilton faced a difficult weekend at the Albert Park circuit before the race even began. The 7-time world champion expressed feeling flat after being knocked out of Q2 during Saturday's qualifying session. His troubles continued during the Grand Prix when he had to retire after just 17 laps due to an engine failure at turn 10. Hamilton's season so far hasn't been smooth sailing. His best result has been a 7th place finish in Bahrain. Speaking after his retirement in Australia, he admitted that this was the worst start to a season he had ever experienced. When asked if it was worse than the past 2 years, he responded affirmatively, even comparing it to 2009. Reflecting on his initial optimism after testing, Hamilton acknowledged the challenges faced by both himself and the entire Mercedes team. He described the situation as tough on the spirit, especially after so much effort during the winter and the expectation of fighting for wins. Despite the disappointment, Hamilton expressed gratitude for the dedication and effort of his team, which continues to inspire him. "I mean, this is the worst start to a season I've ever had," he responded. When pushed on whether it had been even worse than the past 2 years, Hamilton added, "Oh yeah, for sure, and it's worse than 2009, I think." Is Mercedes in trouble? The words of George stick with me, especially when he talked about the rumors of Lewis moving to Ferrari. He mentioned feeling worried because it would mean Lewis had completely lost faith in Mercedes. While Lewis might see a glimmer of hope with a new team, George seems stuck. Unless Toto steps down and sells the team, I can't see George leaving on his own terms. But George is still young and has time for him to explore other opportunities. Eventually, drivers like Alonso, Hamilton and Checo will retire, and George can wait it out if he needs to. As long as he keeps performing well, I'm happy for Lewis that he has something to look forward to with his Ferrari move. But the future for Mercedes looks grim. It's still surreal to think about. When the ground effect regulations started in 2022 and Mercedes revealed their zero-pod design, many of us assumed they would continue their dominance from 2014 to 2021. But everything from Brazil 2021 onwards feels like a dream, doesn't it? Currently, Mercedes is the only team struggling to figure out what's wrong with their car and why it's not performing as well as others. While other teams already have some ideas on how to improve their cars, Mercedes seems to be at a loss. In terms of research and development, I expect Mercedes to try different things in the hopes that something works. They did this in 2022 and 2023, but it didn't lead to success. Like other dominant teams, Mercedes has experienced a brain drain, with people leaving for better opportunities. However, their struggle to maintain their status and become a midfield team has been surprising. They made mistakes with the car's concept in 2022, stuck with it in 2023 based on limited data, and were surprised when it didn't improve. It seems they tried to mimic the style of Red Bull and McLaren without fully understanding what made those cars successful. Recently, they planned to test things in Melbourne before making upgrades, but it seems like those plans may have changed. In contrast, Ferrari seems to have grasped the concept well, despite facing similar design challenges. Mercedes continues to struggle to understand why their car isn't performing as well as others. Another concern for Mercedes is the risk of falling behind McLaren and possibly AMR by the end of the year. Toto Wolff mentioned the drastic difference in performance between McLaren last year and now, highlighting the need for Mercedes to understand what went wrong. While it may seem like McLaren simply built a better car, the reality is they recognized their mistakes early and took corrective actions. Mercedes, on the other hand, stuck with their ideas.